Burkina Faso continues to work to strengthen its military capacity in the face of growing threats and security concerns across the country. In recent years, Burkina Faso, which has also grown accustomed to armored vehicles, has received armored personnel carriers from various countries. Turkey has selected the Eger Yalçın armored vehicle, which has once again received a large number of armored vehicles and artillery systems from China. The first signs of the delivery emerged earlier this month, with images shared on social media. The video shows military vehicles loaded from the ship being carried ashore by crane at the port and then transported inland by heavy-duty transport trucks. The vehicles include SR-5 multi-barrel rocket launchers.
What if I told you that one of the world's poorest, most war-torn nations has just done what many African countries have failed to do in decades? Build fully operational military factories that are now producing weapons, vehicles, and technology on their own soil? Yes, you heard that right. Burkina Faso, once dismissed as a fragile state drowning in insecurity and foreign dependence, now stands at the center of a quiet revolution. The very country that just a few years ago struggled to defend its borders against terrorist insurgencies is now mass-producing the tools of defense, and doing it without waiting for the approval of Paris, Washington, or Brussels. For decades, Africa has been kept in a cycle of dependence. Nations import weapons at inflated costs, often second-hand, and with strings attached. Burkina Faso was no exception. But today something remarkable is unfolding inside this small West African nation. Its new military factories, hidden behind guarded gates and barbed wire, are running day and night, and they are producing more than just rifles and ammunition, from importer to producer. To understand the shock of this moment, you must first recall Burkina Faso's recent past. After the fall of President Roch Kabore in 2022 and the rise of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the country became the epicenter of a bold new doctrine: self-reliance. For Traoré, speeches weren't enough. He demanded action, and action came in the form of assembly lines, welding machines, and local engineers trained in secret partnerships with countries like Russia, Iran, and even smaller Eastern European states. The results? Burkina Faso now manufactures light firearms for its growing army and civilian auxiliaries, armored vehicles refitted from local metal and steel plants, drones used for reconnaissance and counterterrorism operations, protective gear and uniforms designed not in Paris but in Ouagadougou. This is not just military production, it is sovereignty turned into metal and firepower, the symbolism of the factories. Think about it. For generations, African nations were told that advanced military production was too complicated, too expensive, or too dangerous to handle locally. That narrative kept Africa dependent. Burkina Faso has now ripped that script apart. These factories are more than industrial sites. They are symbols of defiance, proof that Africa can stand without begging. And the timing couldn't be more critical. Since leaving ECOWAS alongside Mali and Niger, Burkina Faso has been walking a lonely but determined path. Western aid is shrinking, sanctions have bitten, and regional institutions have tried to isolate the country. Yet instead of collapsing, Burkina Faso has doubled down on its revolution. While Western headlines paint this as dangerous militarization, many ordinary Burkinabés see something different. A chance to defend their land, reclaim dignity, and finally stop depending on countries that often fueled the very insecurity they pretended to solve. A nation at work. Step inside these factories, if you were ever allowed, and you would see Burkinabe engineers, many in their 20s, operating heavy machines. You would see sparks flying from welding torches, the grinding of steel, and rows of workers assembling rifles with precision. The smell of oil and iron fills the air. It is not the image of chaos that foreign media likes to show. It is the image of a people building their future one weapon at a time. There's a powerful irony here. For years, Burkina Faso begged for weapons to defend its villages from terrorists. Today, it no longer must beg. It can produce. And this, perhaps, is what terrifies the outside world the most. Not that Burkina Faso has weapons, but that it no longer needs permission to own them. Do you believe Burkina Faso's military factories represent a dangerous path toward isolation, or a bold step toward African independence? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next part of this powerful story.
The Kosovo Military Equipment Factory. Little known about, yet it is a reality, is the Kosovo Military Equipment Factory. Launched in March 2024, the factory is capable of producing up to 5,000 AK-47 assault rifle, 10 million bullets, and 500 military infantry vehicles, providing a real shield against the terrorists of the Sahel. While some African leaders beg for foreign armies to defend them, Captain Traoré says no. The Kosoto military factory now produces rifles, ammunition, and armored vehicles, ensuring Burkina Faso's security is in Burkinabe hands. The results? $200 million saved annually on arms imports. 800 skilled jobs for engineers and technicians. Stronger defense against terrorism without foreign interference. This is what true sovereignty looks like.
When the news broke that Burkina Faso's military factories were no longer a dream but a reality, the international reaction was swift, divided, and deeply telling. Shockwaves through ECOWAS and beyond. For ECOWAS, the regional bloc Burkina Faso once belonged to, this was salt poured into a still bleeding wound. Remember, Burkina Faso, along with Mali and Niger, walked out of ECOWAS earlier in 2025, accusing it of being a puppet of Western interests. Their exit was supposed to isolate them, weaken them, and leave them scrambling for survival. Instead, the opposite happened. Within months, Burkina Faso unveiled factories producing its own arms. For ECOWAS leaders, especially in Abuja, Accra, and Abidjan, this was more than an embarrassment. It was a threat. If Burkina Faso can build weapons locally, what stops other African nations from doing the same? The dream of a West African bloc, controlled through aid packages and military dependency, began to crack. And those cracks terrified not just regional elites, but also Western capitals. Western fear and diplomatic silence. Officially, the West downplays Burkina Faso's factories. Reports in European and American media call them rudimentary, limited in scope, or unsustainable. But off the record, intelligence agencies are worried. A small, landlocked nation once described as one of the weakest in Africa is suddenly producing drones, armored vehicles, and rifles outside of Western oversight. Washington and Paris fear a domino effect. If Burkina Faso succeeds, Niger may follow. If Niger succeeds, Mali may follow. And soon, the very model of African military dependency collapses. And here's the kicker. These factories are not only about defending Burkina Faso, they are about breaking the chains of arms imports, where billions are drained from African treasuries into European and American defense companies every year. Imagine Africa keeping that wealth inside its own borders. That vision keeps Western strategists awake at night. The hidden hand, who helped Burkina Faso. Now let's address the question everyone is whispering. Who made this possible? Burkina Faso does not have the industrial base to build modern factories from scratch in 2 years. The answer lies in a network of silent partners who saw an opportunity to weaken Western influence in Africa. Russia supplied technical expertise, particularly in drone technology and armored vehicle retrofitting. Iran quietly provided blueprints and machinery for small arms production. Turkey, though less openly, offered guidance on uniforms, protective gear, and even training facilities. Asian partners, including companies in China, supplied heavy machinery under the guise of civilian industrial projects. All of this was done under a veil of secrecy. Contracts were never made public. Deliveries were disguised as construction equipment or agricultural machinery. In Ouagadougou's industrial districts, new warehouses sprung up almost overnight, guarded by soldiers and fenced with barbed wire. Few knew what was inside, until now. A bargain with blood and gold, but nothing comes for free. To secure these deals, Burkina Faso had to put something on the table, and that something was gold. Burkina Faso sits on vast gold reserves, some of which were previously exploited by French companies. Under Traoré, many of those contracts were cancelled and mines were either nationalized or handed to new partners. Gold shipments began flowing not to Paris but to Moscow, Tehran, and Ankara. This was the currency of the revolution, yellow metal traded for black steel and drone wings. And so the factories stand today not only as monuments of independence, but also as evidence of how global geopolitics has shifted. For every rifle produced in Ouagadougou, there is likely a bar of Burkinabe gold sitting in a foreign vault. The people's perspective on the ground, opinions are mixed. Some Burkinabe celebrate this development as the dawn of true sovereignty. Villagers who once watched helplessly as terrorists raided their homes now believe their sons in uniform will finally have the equipment to fight back. But others worry. Is Burkina Faso mortgaging its future? Gold is finite, and secret deals often come with hidden strings. Will Burkina Faso trade one master for another? The regional ripple effect. Already, whispers are spreading across West Africa. In Mali and Niger, leaders aligned with Traoré are studying the model closely. Guinea and Chad are watching from the sidelines. Even in Nigeria, discontented voices within the military are quietly questioning, why can't Africa's giant also build its own defense industry? The fear in foreign capitals is not that Burkina Faso becomes a military powerhouse overnight. The fear is that Burkina Faso sparks a revolution of self-reliance, a contagion of independence that spreads across borders. And here lies the heart of the matter. Burkina Faso's factories are not just industrial projects, they're political statements, challenges to a system that has long kept Africa in chains. We will dive into what exactly these factories are producing in detail, how this changes the balance of power in Africa, and why the West might be preparing to strike back economically, or even militarily.
In a bold and inspiring gesture of leadership, President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso has delivered a significant batch of combat and logistical vehicles to the nation's armed forces. This delivery reinforces the president's unwavering commitment to equipping the country's defense forces and intensifying the fight against terrorism. This act comes as a powerful symbol of unity, resilience, and hope for a nation that has faced numerous challenges in its pursuit of peace and territorial integrity. President Traoré personally handed over the keys to these vehicles, stating that they should be viewed as a collective gift from the people, aimed at supporting the army's relentless battle to secure Burkina Faso's sovereignty. Over recent years, the country has grappled with persistent security threats from extremist groups seeking to destabilize its territories. These newly delivered resources mark a significant boost to the military's operational capabilities, enabling them to respond more effectively to the challenges posed by terrorism. The delivery includes a wide range of military assets, such as container units, robust tanker trucks, and mine-resistant armored vehicles.
So, what exactly is being produced inside Burkina Faso's military factories? And how might this change not just Burkina Faso, but Africa's place in the world? Rifles and ammunition, the backbone of defense. The first line of production is small arms. Reliable rifles modeled after the AK platform are rolling out in the thousands. Locally manufactured ammunition ensures that soldiers no longer wait months for deliveries from abroad. For the volunteers for the defense of the fatherland, ordinary farmers and shopkeepers turned auxiliary fighters, this means one thing: every village under threat can finally arm itself. In a country where terrorism once thrived on the fact that villagers had no weapons, this changes the entire equation. Suddenly, the balance of power tips: armored vehicles, built from local steel. Perhaps the most striking achievement has been the assembly of armored vehicles. Using refitted steel from Burkina Faso's own metal plants, engineers now weld and reinforce troop carriers. They may not rival German Leopards or American Humvees, but they serve a different purpose. They are practical, rugged, and built for the unforgiving Sahel terrain. Each vehicle is a symbol of independence. Metal that once sat idle in local factories now turned into machines of defense. Soldiers ride into villages not in borrowed trucks, but in Burkinabe-made armor. Drones, the silent game changers. The crown jewel of Burkina Faso's production is drones. Once a luxury available only to the United States or Turkey, drones are now part of Burkina Faso's defense. These are not Hollywood-style Predator drones, but tactical reconnaissance units capable of surveying vast stretches of desert, locating insurgent camps, and directing ground forces. In a war where militants hide in forests and deserts, drones are eyes in the sky. And the fact that they are made locally, with spare parts printed on 3D machines, shows how far Burkina Faso has come. Beyond weapons, clothing, gear, and morale. The factories are not just about hard steel. They also produce protective helmets, bulletproof vests, and uniforms. For the first time in years, Burkinabe soldiers wear gear that fits, not hand-me-downs from foreign armies. It may sound small, but in war, morale is half the battle. When a soldier feels equipped, he feels equal. This psychological shift, seeing "Made in Burkina Faso" stamped on your rifle, your vest, your helmet, is perhaps the most powerful weapon of all. The balance of power in Africa. Now let's step back. What does this mean for Africa as a whole? Burkina Faso's factories represent a breach in a dam. For decades, arms dependency has been a silent tool of control. If you control a nation's weapons, you control its sovereignty. Today, that grip is weakening. Imagine a future where Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger not only supply their own armies, but export weapons to allies in the Sahel. Imagine African conflicts no longer dictated by who controls the arms trade, but by who controls the factories. That is the nightmare scenario for Western powers, and the dream scenario for Pan-Africanists, the looming counterstrike. But let's not be naive. Moves like this rarely go unanswered. The West has two powerful weapons of its own: economics and influence. Sanctions. Burkina Faso already faces restrictions, but harsher measures could target gold exports, banking systems, and trade partners. Propaganda. Expect a surge of reports painting Burkina Faso's leaders as dictators, its factories as illegal, and its weapons as threats to regional peace. Military pressure. While direct intervention seems unlikely for now, history tells us Western powers often act when their influence is at stake. The sudden rise of locally built drones and armored vehicles will not go unnoticed. The question is, can Burkina Faso withstand the storm? A nation forged in struggle. What cannot be denied is that Burkina Faso has changed. The days of waiting on foreign capitals for second-hand rifles are over. The days of begging for aid while insurgents overrun villages are over.
For more information and for more news on the happenings in the political sector and the world globally, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more updates.